Thank you.
And I'll leave the stage to you. Good luck.
Yes. So we actually did shut down the management group at Capra, and I will try to explain why we did that, and also where we are now, 4 years later. As he said, my name is Therese. I started in Capra in 2016 because I felt at home here. I like the culture, and that's also why I've stayed for so long. There's something about the culture that just makes me feel comfortable. And I've taken on a variety of roles here. Now, it's not a typo. Capra actually means goat, and we use that a lot internally. We call each other goats, and actually when you're between assignments, you're goats on pasture. And right now, I'm on an assignment at Digdir, the Norwegian digitalization agency, where I work as an agile coach.
And I'm Manuel Paes. You might know me as one of the authors of Team Topologies, perhaps. I try to stay a little bit close to product development as well. We have our own academy and temperature for managing cognitive load. And yeah, I've done a number of different roles in my career. I'm a software engineer at heart, if you like. And I was really keen to bring this story from Capra to FastFlow, because I think we can learn a lot of interesting lessons on how they approach their transformation, if you like, by using Team Topologies principles. So once upon a time, this is around end of 2020, me and Matthew, we received this email from Gustav at Capra. So they're a consulting company. They're applying ideas from Team Topologies to have self-organizing teams. So this is about 1 year after the book was published. We're like, this is interesting, applying to consulting has its own challenges because you don't often have that much leverage on your clients, on how they organize, how they interact, and so on. So it was interesting. But then I sort of digged a bit deeper, and I found an article in Norwegian from Capra. Fortunately, the English translation was good enough to understand what it was saying. And then it hit me that actually they're applying the ideas to their whole internal organization. So whatever you can think of, finance, sales, operations. And then I was sort of blown away, like, okay, this is a different beast that we're talking about here. So I found it super interesting. We did then an online event where they were, at these early days, they were explaining what they're trying to do, which is essentially pretty radical transformation, and this was out in the open, and I was just, giving feedback. We, as authors of Team Topologies, we thought from the beginning that the principles should apply further than or broader than just technology, but we didn't have any evidence yet. But I think also there's a level of, I would say, maturity and also ingenuity at Capra that allow them to do this sort of transformation and be so open about what they were doing. And by the way, the first Team Topologies conference that I know of was organized by Capra in September 2022. Sorry, FastFlow. But it was by invitation only, so it was like a private conference. FastFlow is the first public conference around Team Topologies. So let's go back and see, why did you shut down the management group?
Yeah, because it wasn't because we didn't like each other or it didn't work well together. It's actually more a story of a group that managed themselves out of a job, kind of. So I was part of this management group, and we started out fine. We created new values for Capra. We hired a lot of new managers, and everything seems to work quite well. But when we were around 100 employees or so, we saw that something wasn't starting to feel right, and we started asking this question: how can we make sure that we scale the company, but without losing this flat hierarchy that we would like to have and this autonomy? So. And at the same time also, we felt that we weren't getting the engagement that we really wanted from the organization. So when we were creating a new strategy planning a new strategy for 2020 to 2023-ish, we really felt that we needed to do something about the way we were organized. And as good consultants do, we of course read the literature. So we have already read the book Accelerate. And now we found this book, Team Topologies. And as Manuel said, this was written for product organizations, but we felt that it could be used in a consultant company as well. At least was worth trying. Because we had this feeling that this team-first approach was really something that could fit in our company. And we felt that we could apply these principles more broadly internally. So we could kind of standing there feeling that we could, of course, hire just more managers and create a new layer in the organization, or we could try something brand new. So we decided to take the leap and just try. And our CEO at the time said that maybe our competitors and customers will write us off as idiots for trying this, but we felt it was worth the risk. And also the management group themselves didn't want to be the ones to organize or reorganize and design in this new organization. So we actually went out to all the people in the organization and asking, would you like to be part of reorganizing Capra? Would you like to be part of this journey? And the ones that was raising their hands was creating this new team, this very first team in this new organization, which we called Team Ni-org, and Ni means new in Norwegian. So they laid the groundwork, the foundation of this new organization. And they started to work. And I was also actually raising my hands. I was part of this new team. And the first team we created was Team Frontend. And that was just because that was an easy next step. That was a community of practice that we could easily turn into a first team. So we were kind of trying to start with the first win. And then we also created these objectives for the organization to enable employees to participate in running the company, and hope that that will lead to both increased employment engagement and better decision making, and also to increase autonomy and flexibility to make Capra more robust and adaptable. So that were our main objectives for this reorganization. And then we create the value streams. So we have 3 internal value streams and 1 that is more customer-centric. So we have recruit new goats, or employees, building company and culture, building competence and personal and professional community, and of course develop, sell, and deliver services. So in these small companies, it could be quite easy to find the value streams compared to, I guess, more complex organizations.
So I'd like to sort of take a step back and for us to think about what kind of lessons and suggestions we can take from this journey from Capra. And also for me, it's interesting, obviously Capra is fairly smallish in a specific industry in consulting for IT. So one of the things that I really like is how they started with the value streams. In their case, because you're not building products that made a lot of sense. But what I see with many organizations, and a lot of them are trying to do this move from project orientation to product orientation, but they tend to stop at the kind of product portfolio level. I find it's really helpful to think about your value streams, and even all the way up to what are the high-level value streams that the business provides to our customers. Because if you don't, you're kind of limited in your product decisions, and you might end up prioritizing or focusing more on what is the value of the product versus what is the value to the customer, right? And even from kind of a dependency perspective, obviously in Team Topologies, we talk a lot about how we need to reduce blocking dependencies between teams. But if we look at the value stream level, so business value streams, which are maybe a few levels up from what the teams are doing, we should also be thinking, how do we reduce dependencies between the business value streams so they can evolve more independently, faster, and provide more value to the customers, right? So what I typically see in most organizations as well is that whether they're adopting Team Topologies or something else, but something that is kind of fundamental change to the way they operate, they tend to set up this transformation program, maybe 12 months, 24, 36. Sometimes they want to do it in 3 months, which is interesting. But what you see in Capra is that they embrace this sort of continuous evolution. They didn't have a detailed plan from the beginning. And so in fact, with conversations with Therese, I found that the Team New Org, yes, in the beginning, they were more like kind of traditional transformation team. They were defining what do we need to do, what we need to put in place. So they're more decision makers. But over time, they became more sort of enablers. They were just there to help new teams get set up, to figure out is anything missing, what do the teams need from us. And eventually, even more like almost like kind of platform team. As things got more mature, they were just there to provide some kind of essential services, and eventually they were out of business because things were now mature and understood enough that they didn't need a dedicated team leading the transformation, right? So that's quite different from what I see in most organizations where there is a team that decides and sets up the transformation program. And like I said, yes, in the beginning, you're going to need that, but having this idea that we're not going from one state to another end state with this transformation. It's not linear, right? And finally, if you have that approach, you're going to expect bumps on the road, right? When the rubber hits the road, you should be seeing things happening that you didn't expect. You should see challenges, you should be involving the teams, and you should have them occasionally say, no, this doesn't work, or we missed this capability, or you made some assumptions that are not correct. If that's not happening, you're not getting that feedback from the teams, then probably you're in this linear transformation view, which is probably not going to get the results that you need. So that's actually a good sign when there are challenges and we get feedback from the teams, right? That's where you actually get the learning to evolve towards the things you're looking for, more autonomy, faster flow, etc. So what happened to Capra after you shut down the management group?
Yeah, because of course we have learned a lot along the way, and as you said, we didn't plan all this from the beginning. So let's just start with the beginning. We decided to shut down the management group, and as being part of that group, it felt a bit extreme. I like this group. We have bonded, we have learned together, we have grown together. But I knew it was right, but it hurt a bit as well. But we knew that in a team organization like this, when you have nodes of team, there is no team to rule them all. So the management group didn't make sense anymore. And we didn't have this great announcement. Our CEO at the time announced it on Slack, and it actually says the management group is dead, long live autonomous teams. And that was it, actually. And then an explanation of this would probably hurt a bit. We are not quite sure how this will look like, but reach out to someone if you're afraid or need any help. And in the beginning, we were actually more or less allergic to teams, to management and to leadership. So even the teams didn't have team leaders internally. But we knew that the tasks and the responsibilities that the management group had needed to be handled somehow. So Team New York started then to create new teams and to then distribute the leadership in the organization. So this Team New York created, and these teams there, we have Team Finance, Team Strategy, and Team Operational to handle some of the works from the management group, and also the recruitment team. We also have a team social to handle all the social stuff happening in Capra, and also the team goals and culture to take care of the people. And so then we don't have this centralized leadership. We have leadership is now happening inside of the team in the organization. And this was radical, but it felt an extreme, but it felt right in some way. And to show that we didn't know exactly how this should look like, we actually found that Team Operational, so that there is actually no operational work that wasn't already handled by a more specialized team. So after a few months, they thought we don't have anything to do here. So they posted on Slack that, sorry, we will shut ourselves down. We don't have any work left to do, so we are open for new opportunities. So that was Team Operational just saying, goodbye. And now, actually, after a while, also we have seen that most of the teams do have a team leader. They created that themselves, but maybe it's a rotating role often. And I think also that's what's happening when you don't have centralized leadership. Teams can reorganize as they like, and teams can also disband when they don't no longer have a purpose to stay alive. So that just happens now. But of course, there is challenges, and especially around alignment, because of course, this team strategy creates the strategy for Capra. But when you don't have any middle managers who make sense of that strategy and translate it into action, it turns out that everyone needs to understand the big picture and the strategy, or at least almost everyone. And that is quite hard to make sure that happens, because in a more normal organization, when change is approved, it happens. But at Capra, change happens when everyone finds that it's necessary for a change. So team strategy tried to explain and describe the strategy at all hands meetings, of course, but also in Slack messages and internal Notion pages. They even visit teams to say, this is the strategy, how would you align to that? And still, we see that not all teams get the strategy and take that into account. So that this is an ongoing process, and we haven't nailed it yet. We are still learning. And then in a distributed architecture like the ones in Capra, teams also depend on each other to reach their goals. And that also means that it's not just one team to communicate with all the other teams, it's also communication between all the teams that is necessary. So what we have seen where that doesn't happen is that you have a challenge with overlapping responsibilities, or maybe that you think that another team will handle the task and they don't. And I have one of the things that we learned a lot about regarding this is when the tech lead competence teams were setting up their goals. They wanted to strengthen the professional environment for technology leaders in Capra, so the ones that are hired out as technology leader, tech leads. And they wanted to hire more senior professionals. So they created their OKRs, they created a plan, and they got to action. And then they talked to the recruitment team and said, this is, we need to hire this many professionals this quarter. And then the recruitment team said, no, that's not part of our OKRs, so you have to come back next quarter. We don't have time for that now. And the team said, okay, but then we'll do it ourselves then. And they did, and they nailed it. They were perfectly capable of recruiting new technology leaders. But what they had forgotten to do was to inform the sales team. So when they were busy recruiting new this new competence and got a lot of new people into the company, the sales team wasn't prepared to sell this to our customers. And at the same time, the consultant business in Oslo took a downturn, and the people that our customers let go first was the tech leads, of course, because they felt that they could hire that themselves. So we had more unplaced technology leaders in Capra than ever before. So even though this team did a great job for the competence building value stream, they had forgot to sync with the teams in the service sales value stream. And that led to local decisions that were not fully understood or aligned with the rest of the company and the surroundings. And then budgeting is really difficult when you don't have a management group. This used to be predictable. We had the manager coming into the management groups, presenting their budget, and we made adjustment and we made it work. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. But it was not very... the rest of the company didn't know how we did this. It was not very transparent. So when we shut down the management group and the teams set their own budget, Team Finance thought that this would just work, as they had before. So they said, okay, now all the teams had presented a budget, but we need to find 1.5 million crowns, so go ahead. And the teams were caught off guard. They said, what? We don't have control? What is this? Do you have to cut all the plans we have for the conference we're going to? Do we have to cut our social costs? What is this? And then the Team Finance realized that they were not aware that this is kind of normal process, but it hadn't been communicated before. So of course they had to go into all the teams and help them to find the right way to find this money, and also team strategy made sure that we didn't cut on everything that would take us in the wrong direction. So what this really learned us was that when we're opening a budget like this, without preparing the mindset of everyone in the company, things can change, even though and it can lead to really a lot of confusion, even though the numbers aren't really changing, and a lot of stress in the organization. But over time, the teams are more used to this now, and they are really taking ownership of their budget. And then, of course, you have different challenges again. Like Team Social, that saw that this Christmas gift post, we don't feel that we have money for that next year, so we will just cut that and use that money on something else. And Christmas came, and I got posted on Slack, what happened to Christmas gifts this year? And Team Social said, oh, sorry, we had forgotten to inform that we will not have Christmas gifts this year, and by the way, not next year either. So they apologized for not telling anyone, but it was their decision. So, and if you don't like that, well, try to join the team and change it, or else you just have to trust that the ones that are in the team makes the right decision. And that is kind of how we can see that you have those two choices. You can either step up to change it, or you can just trust that the ones that had step up knew what they were doing. And that is kind of what we will see, that is leadership as a service. If you care about something, you step up, and if you don't care enough about it, you trust the ones that do. And now in Capra, we do have the same value streams, but we have a lot of new teams. We have around 26 to 29 teams in Capra, and as Manuel said, we don't have Team New York anymore. We saw that our services weren't needed. Teams start and disband themselves. And personally, I'm now part of the team Goats and Culture and Team Delivery in Capra, but that have changed a lot over time. So, yeah. What can you learn about this then?
Yes, as we talked about the journey and reflected more on what they've done, I think there are some interesting drivers for their transformation that are interesting to think about for many of you, probably. And I think there were some key drivers in their story, and one of them was to drive autonomy with the team interactions. So Therese mentioned one example where there was sort of a gray area, whose responsibility is it, and who needs to be informed of that. And that's normal. We should expect that to happen. And there are many more examples that we talked about, but we couldn't fit all of them. And the idea of the team interactions from Team Topologies is really this, is to drive more autonomy in teams by using the interactions. So if there is some lack of clarity between who's responsible for what, how does this OKR relate to that OKR, things like this, we expect teams to collaborate to figure out, okay, how do we clarify the responsibilities so that going forward, each team can focus on their mission and be more autonomous, independent, right? Or in other cases, some teams lack some skills that another team can help them with, so they can, facilitate and help the other team be more independent, more cross-functional. And that is exactly the expectation we have from Team Topologies. It's not that we map the team interactions to, in a nice diagram, and yes, everything acts as a service or collaborating all the time, because if it's a static view of how the organization is evolving, then it's not really evolving, right? We're not really thinking about how to use the interactions for more autonomy. And another driver here was they were really driving behaviors with the leadership style. So actually, first of all, when I heard you're shutting down the management group, I'm like, okay, what did we do? Maybe this is too much. Is this gonna cause problems? And then even after that, for a while, my understanding was that they're moving essentially to a kind of servant leadership model, right? Where you still have this leadership entity, but you sort of turn around the pyramid, the organizational pyramid, so they behave more as a support to the rest of the teams. But that wasn't even the case. As Therese explained, they actually moved to distributed leadership. There is no kind of reference point where you can go and say, can you, help us do this for us, or tell us what should be our OKRs, or what have you, right? That doesn't exist today at Capra. So even for me, that was sort of, unexpected. And so I'm not saying that you go back to your manager tomorrow or Monday and tell them, let's shut down management group. It's probably not a good idea, for the record. But if we think about how the leadership style influences behaviors at team level, right? If we have a very traditional top-down or cascading style of leadership and setting metrics, OKRs, etc., then of course the teams are not going to feel like they can participate and make better decisions or their own decisions about what to build or not to build, which metrics are going to be helpful, how can we help the business with our decisions, right? They're going to be expecting to be told what to build and what metrics they have to try to achieve. So just be mindful of that. Like whatever the leadership style is going to influence the behaviors of the teams. And finally, as Therese mentioned, over-communicate when you're doing this type of transformation or change, right? To get the alignment that they wanted. Of course, it's much harder in a network-based organization. So, and people get informed in different ways, so you can't just assume we communicate once or twice and everyone's going to be aligned. Even in a kind of smallish organization, it had to be constantly repeated, shared in different ways so that people actually get aligned with what is the business overall strategy, and they can make better decisions. It's a cost that makes sense because you want teams to have more autonomy, make local decisions, but be aligned with the business strategy.
Yes, I will run up. I'll be really short. So the key lesson from Capra is that leadership is a service, it's not a position, and that, as you said, alignment is more challenging in a decentralized organization, and even more important. And that, of course, autonomy requires a learning culture, or else it's really hard. And then just to take us one way further, you can just, next slide. So from here, this wasn't just about shutting down a management group. This was about redefining leadership, as you said. And that's what we have done. And now also we actually, the next adventure is now to find a new owners for Capra to take us this willows even further. And of course we have started a team for that, team owners. And one last thing, we do actually have a CEO at Capra. So how do you do that? How can you be a CEO in a company and you don't have a management group? Which team should we be part of? And how does that actually work? So I don't have time to talk about that now, but find me during the day and I can try to answer questions about that as well.
All right, and so I was thinking when we were preparing the presentation to end with 3 to 5 key takeaways that you can apply in your organization. But that would always be incomplete, and depending on your context, it might make more sense or less. And then I was reflecting more about their journey. I think what is more sort of universal that we can take away is what are the values that were driving the transformation, right? And I think one of them is being bold but mindful, right? So the idea of the goats, there are going to be accidents, they're going to break some things, maybe they'll eat the plants that they shouldn't eat. But they had the expectation that we're going to be detecting these problems, challenges, and course correct when those happen. It's not that we're just going to change everything and now everything's different and let's see what happens. It's being mindful of what is actually, what are the teams complaining or feeling that it's not working, that we can adjust. And they were doing this because they understood sort of the trade-off, right? We want more autonomy in teams, and even at some points that's going to be less efficient than if everything was clearly laid out in terms of responsibilities. And so it's a trade-off that they were willing to accept. And also another value I see here is setting expectations over detailed plans. They had very specific objectives, more autonomy in teams, more employee engagement, making better local decisions with the right context. And if you set those expectations, you don't necessarily know, especially in larger organizations, how we're going to get there. Maybe different groups are going to have different journeys to get to more autonomy, faster flow, etc., compared to other groups in the organization, right? So I really believe it's much more helpful if we set expectations and then we embark on the journey versus let's do a pilot and then just try to scale to the rest of the organization with detailed plans or processes, right? And finally, being okay with being uncomfortable, right? In this sort of transformation, yes, you don't have the answers to all of your questions. Maybe you have very few answers, and you don't know exactly when you're going to get those answers. Is this journey that's going to take place where you're going to start to figure out what works and what doesn't? And so being okay with that and accepting, because we understand what we're trying to do, what are the benefits and the expectations, I think it was a key aspect of transformation at Capra, which I think more organizations could benefit as well. So to end, a quick news flash. We're actually publishing second edition of Team Topologies later this year with a new foreword afterward and some new case studies. That said, we do try to publish as much as possible on the website, on teamtopologies.com. So you have there the Capra example with a lot more details that we couldn't cover today. So I highly recommend having a look, and many other examples of different organizations that adopted the ideas from Team Topologies in very different ways in some cases. So super interesting. And with that, just want to thank you and say we'll be around for the day. So looking forward to conversations and to chatting with most of you.